fact, I guess you could have pushed the record button. There we go. One way to talk about this is, in fact, to say that what did I do with it? There it is. That we have to be afraid of the government and we have to participate in the government. Now, I'll pause and get reactions. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, you have a prayer every Shabbat for the country.
Right.
And
Yeah,
for the
I'm going to
leaders.
get to that one. Hang in there.
I
Because
mean, you know, it's incorporated in the liturgy.
Yeah.
And I think that all four branches of Judaism have the same prayer, you know, for the country in which we're living.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to repeat for a moment because I recorded late. So for those I'm going to send the recording to, we basically had a split decision as to whether or not we were guests or permanent residents. And according to some text, that one I just read earlier, it shows that we are in fact guests. And now we're talking about whether or not what obligations we have and if we fear the government. All right. So, Mo, what do you think? I haven't had a chance to ask you. Should we fear the government? And we need government or not?
Well, I never even thought about this subject until you brought it up. I just, you know, just my due diligence and my living in America and my ethical being, I just vote. So, you know, that's the way I feel. You know,
okay.
Mandated or not.
Right. But now that you're exposed to it, do you believe that these Jewish texts are part of a message, either from the ethics of our fathers, which goes back over 2,000 years ago, or the prophet that goes back even further to tell us to do these things? Is that influence? Is that a message to us on how to behave?
I guess you can interpret it that way.
Okay. Paul, what do you think?
I think exactly what Mo said about that. It's a message to behave and definitely not to fear the government.
Oh, not to fear the government, but it actually says fear the government.
Fear the government.
The text says we should fear the government.
I don't agree with fear the government.
Okay. And care to expand?
They're supposed to be our leaders. We should respect them. And that's why we're voting, hopefully, the right way. And we should respect them and they should respect us. And we should not fear them. Just like the black people shouldn't be afraid of all the policemen.
Ooh, interesting point. Okay. Marty and Nancy, what do you think? Should we fear the government? I got you, Carolyn. Thank you. Should we fear the government?
I think not.
Wow. So the ethics of our fathers was wrong. Carolyn, what do you think?
I don't think we should fear the government at all. We had to fear Hitler, and he was the government. And we should not be fearing anybody who's in power today.
Okay. And Jan, did you have your hand up?
Because I think that in Pirkei Avot also it teaches us that we want to keep ourselves anonymous from the government. We want to live a little under, under the vision and the view of the government. That the Pirkei, I was going to go grab my Pirkei Avot in a minute, but that section that says to keep yourself anonymous from the government.
Yeah, and I think what Jan is referring to, if you know somebody who's a government official, one of the Pirkei Avot says, stay away from the individual because you don't want to establish that close of a relationship. That might be the one that you're referring to. Mm-hmm. So, wow. Go ahead, Steve.
I think that a lot of these texts, especially when dealing with the diaspora Judaism, were written in the view of the fact that the Jewish population in all of these countries was demeaned and separated and persecuted, and therefore the government was not the average Jewish person's friend, and therefore staying separate and apart was the way to go in order to survive. The experience, the Pirkei Avot was not necessarily written to reflect the experience of Jews in the United States of America, where people fled to because of the freedom here, but that was governmental freedom. The government bestowed that freedom on everybody. In Europe, it wasn't the same. There's a lot of religious persecution, which was looked upon by the government without really a lot of criticism. It was accepted. And, we were not the people that was incorporated into these societies, and some of them very, very late in history, Jews couldn't even own property. That's why they became merchants and things like that, because they couldn't own land or they couldn't own any kind of real estate. They weren't allowed to. And some of them, they couldn't even vote.
So question, how many of us live in an HOA or a condo association that has rules? Anybody? All right, let me ask you a question. If you have a condo regulation that says on Sunday night, you cannot put your garbage out until 5 o'clock, would you put it out at 3:30?
Many people do.
I understand that. But would you?
Not supposed to.
You're not supposed to. Aha. So you're not supposed to. But as Erwin said, what stops you?
You get a fine. They'll fine you.
Aha. So you have fear of getting a fine because the HOA, which is the government, at least in these type, which you volunteer to live in, by the way. So, wow, I'm going to disagree with you, Steve, because we do fear the government, because if we didn't fear the government, at least in our HOAs and condo associations, there would be chaos. And
so I say that the government's been feared for a long, long time. Whether it's feared in this country is another story, and things have changed. But in Europe, the government was feared. In fact, as Jan said, you stayed away from the government. You didn't want the government near you.
Anybody else want to add something to this discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Arthur, and then
I think the translation into the word fear is questionable. I think maybe the intent is respect of the government, respect of the rules, respect of the way the government manages the society. I'm not convinced that because the English translation in that text is FEAR that's appropriate.
Okay, I respect it, and just for the sake of conversation, I respect the right of the government to have the IRS. I fear that if I don't pay my taxes, they'll come after me.
No, and I would say you respect that as a citizen, you have responsibility to pay your fair share of taxes. So it shouldn't be fear, it should be, hey, I'm doing the right thing. And I think that's what Judaism preaches. Do the right thing. Tikkun olam.
Let's repair the world.
I'll do it because I'm afraid someone's going to knock on my door and take my car away because I didn't pay.
Gotcha. The Brody household has a comment. Go ahead.
I do. It seems to me that the word fear should be replaced with cooperate, and to understand that all human relationships and cities, towns, whatever, they need to have rules because individuals are so diverse. So I think everybody should be willing to cooperate with the country or wherever they are that will give them the opportunity to live there and to have a good life. And whether they're rules or fear or whether they're cooperating because they're necessary is a different thing.
All right. Anybody else want to add something to this part? Go ahead, Carolyn. And then Mo.
I think instead of the word fear, I think it should be respect and obey.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Mo, go.
Yes, I think fear. I think fear means we should be watchful of a government.
Go
ahead, Cantor.
I think that fear is a little too harsh of a term. It's respect and knowledge that what we're going into, using the HOA community, we all knew that going in, and there's always going to be a couple loose cannons that don't follow the rules, but for the most part, we agree to it, and it's not something that's painful or anything to do. It's just following the rules, like stop signs.
Got it. Cantor, and then Ruth, did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay, Cantor, go ahead.
Fear is a big deal in Judaism because you talk about fearing God, God-fearing person, fear your parents, anything that has anything to do with like government, with ruling and not following the rules. So I think that word is not exactly what you might think in English fear, It's, can't really think of what exactly it talks about, you know.
Respect.
All right. So
I'll think about it. I've got to think of the word. There's a certain word for it.
okay, so let me try one more example, and then we'll move on to the next text. If everything should be out of respect, and you should not fear the government, here's my suggestion, because there was a big article recently in the Sun Sentinel. Let's disband the Florida Highway Patrol, so that if somebody wants to drive 95 miles an hour on I-80, they have all the right to do so, because they have no fear of getting fined by the government, which is the Florida Highway Patrol. If they got rid of the Highway Patrol, what do you think all the cars would do?
Smash into each other.
Yeah,
The
which
word
is what the Sun
disband.
Sentinel said, that there is so little enforcement on I-95, which has one of the highest accident rates, and the only reason is there's only 3 cops that patrol that whole stretch. Therefore, the fear of government gets people to slow down, because I guarantee you, if you're going 90 and you see a cop, you're going to continue going 90?
No.
No. So this is, we don't like it, but this particular, did you say yes, Cantor?
I think you better go faster than that.
Go faster. All right. So let's go ahead and see what else we can dig up here. The next one is Deuteronomy. Aha. You shall appoint magistrates and officials for your tribes in all the settlements that the Lord is giving you, and they shall govern the people with due justice. This one is extremely important. And by the way, this one sentence, along with everything else that follows it, is the basic model of the United States government that we are voting for today. Why do I say that? Well, if you go back and you look at the Torah, and some of us know this, the Torah talks about how the tribes should govern themselves. And remember, each individual tribe had their own borders. Each individual tribe had their own flag. And it, just like we do in the States. And they even say that each individual area should have their own governor, even though they don't use that word, but it is described. And there should be representatives within that tribe who are men of intellect. They don't say women, I apologize. Men of intellect and high moral value. And they should be the leaders of each individual tribe. What do we get from there? The governors and the House and the state Senate and the state legislature. And that follows the way the model of the U.S. government was set up. But wait, there's more. Okay? You might be wondering, when they did this thing with the government, how did they know all this stuff? Well, the answer is that when the Puritans came over, before they were here, and we mentioned this once before, they spent 1 full year in a European country living with Sephardic Jews, who taught them all about Judaism from the Old Testament and a lot of the texts. And when they came over to the United States, they went ahead and took a lot of these laws and stories and adopted them to form the government. This is proven when the state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts developed their first laws. They developed 75 laws to begin with. 38 of them came directly from the Torah. The city of New Haven basically did the same thing. So this one line, plus others, began to form the United States government as we see it. As a matter of fact, some of us might not realize it, but the country is based under Judeo-Christian principles. And what word comes first? Judeo. And then the Christian principles. And that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. In addition to that, the Torah says that each tribe should select men of high value and assign them to represent them in even a bigger arena, which is where we get the House of Representatives and the Senate. And then you might wonder, where did the Constitution ever come up with the idea that the President of the United States has to be born in the United States? The answer is from Israel way back when. Why? When they had kings of Israel, the requirement to be a king is that you be Jewish and born to a Jewish mother, and converts were not allowed to be kings, which means you can't come from another country into the United States, get United States citizenship, and then run for president. So these rules, which I condensed quite a bit, are the foundation for the American system, but I forgot one. We cover the executive, we cover the legislature. There's one missing, the judicial. And of course, we know that Moses, from his father-in-law's advice, began to establish judges, which ultimately led to the Sanhedrin, which was the high court or the Supreme Court. And if we don't believe any of this stuff, let's just go to the building where the Supreme Court is housed, and there's a insignia right on the outside. Anybody know what that insignia says?
I saw it recently, I forgot.
Justice shall you pursue.
That's how
Right
they said
on
it.
there.
They said it to
And
us.
if we don't believe any of this stuff, how many of us have been to see the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia? And what does it say on the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia?
Something like that, but it comes from Leviticus or something.
Yeah, proclaim liberty throughout the land.
Throughout the land.
And by the way, where did that come from? The Torah. And who said that? Moshe
Charlton
Rabbeinu.
Heston.
So when you put all that together, what we elected, voted for, is a model of the American government based on Torah Talmudic text.
Yes, we're not guests.
What sayeth you now that this information has been revealed? Someone start me off.
I just have a question.
Yes.
What do they consider high moral value?
Oh.
Whoa, that's wide open.
You know what? Because we said we're not going to do anything political, I'm going to abstain from answering that question. But I think high moral value in those days was following Torah, following laws, etc.
One of the criteria was that a judge should not ever take a bribe.
Yep, a judge should not take a bribe. The judge should not differentiate in his judgment between the poor and the rich.
Right.
And so therefore, you can translate that no matter what race, creed, or religion you are, everyone should have justice morally. So what do you think of that?
I think we're
ahead,
overrun
Paul.
with sinners.
I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
I think we're overrun with sinners.
Yeah, okay. Wait a minute. Whoa. Let's not get carried away. There are sinners, okay, but I don't think we're overrun with them, because otherwise we'd have an area like is in the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which is the most lawless area in the world, which has no laws, which is why it's called lawless. So there are a lot of sinners, but I don't think we're overrun with sinners. I'm not ready to concede that, unless you have data and proof to back that up. But what do you think about the fact that our government is based on the Torah? Believable or not? Ruth, go.
Absolutely. I think historically, in history classes, going way back to school time, there was always mention of those biblical quotations that was the basis. At the term Judeo-Christian, I remember from the time I was a kid in school, and I've always felt that these things were based on things that came originally from the Bible. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that you're telling me that today. This is something that I've known.
Anybody want to reject the premise I just put forth?
No.
I think I'll reject it somewhat. I think philosophically, our political system has embraced those ideas, but I think in real life, they've fallen short on integrity and executing those ideas.
I got you, but again, I want to shy away from that. I just
Yeah,
want to
no,
talk about the framework.
I'm talking 200 years. I'm not just talking 4.
Right. Yeah, so I guess what I'm asking is, does anybody reject the framework that I associated with the United States today based on Torah principles? No.
I think
You have to.
when you read any history of any of the forefathers, from Madison and Jefferson, they all mention they being students of the Old Testament.
You bet. Not only that, Carolyn, bear with me 1 second. I got you. You're next. Not only that, I don't know if you guys remember this. At one time, the United States was trying to decide what the official language of the country was going to be. There were 2 languages that were up for discussion. Anybody care to guess what they were?
I think 1 was Hebrew.
That's right. Number 2 was Hebrew. Number 1 was English. And obviously English won out. But Hebrew was so predominant in those days that many of our leaders, Jefferson, Hamilton, and a few others, many others, spoke Hebrew eloquently. And there's data to say that when people gave graduation speeches at the Yale and some of the other colleges, they delivered them in Hebrew.
Well, Yale's motto is "Lux et Lex," and
That's right.
also there's a Hebrew inscription on the Great Seal of Yale University.
That's right. I want to go back to Carolyn. Go ahead, Carolyn, go.
If I'm not mistaken, I had read, and I don't know where I read it, that the forefathers, when they were drafting the Constitution, there was huge arguments within those that were framing it on whether or not it should be based on Judaism.
Yep. And looks like those that thought it should be based on Judaism won.
Yes, but there was huge arguments on whether it should or should not be based on it.
Yep. All right. So we vote for the governments that were set up in our Torah that we are currently following and the Sanhedrin. All right, let's go on to something else. In 1984, there was a very prominent rabbi, Moshe Feinstein. Moshe Feinstein wrote a letter to the Jews in America that said the following. On reaching the shores of the United States, Jews found a safe haven. The rights guaranteed by the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights have allowed us the freedom to practice our religion without interference and to live in this republic in safety. A fundamental principle of Judaism is hakaras hatov, recognizing benefits afforded us and giving expression to our appreciation. Therefore, he writes, it is incumbent upon each Jewish citizen to participate in the democratic system, which guards the freedoms we enjoy. The most fundamental responsibility of each individual is to register and vote. Therefore, I urge all members of the Jewish community to fulfill their obligations by registering as soon as possible and by voting. By this, we can express our appreciation and contribute to the continued security of our community. Signed, Rob Moshe Feinstein. Esteem. I'm from Omaha. Okay, so what do you think about that guy? Mo, we haven't heard much from you, so I'm just going to ask you, what do you think about that guy's letter? Did he have a right to write that letter?
That's Mo.
Everybody he has his opinion, and he must have had some deep feelings about America.
All right, someone else? What do you think about that letter? Gene, what do you think about that letter?
I like it very much. I think it's very strong and it should be taken to heart by all of us.
So there you go, the Jewish religion telling us what to do and to vote. Interesting. Mr. Cohn, Mr. and Mrs. Cohn, what do you think? No opinion?
So,
All right, Marty, what do you think? Haven't called on you much. Marty and Erwin, what do you guys think? Either one. Marty, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Good letter. Is there anybody that doesn't like this letter?
No, I think it's great.
Did you know it existed?
No.
Not really.
Now the question becomes, did it influence anybody? I don't know, but here's a fact.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Steve, go ahead.
I mean, the the Jewish people have voted, you know, in any election that they were able to register to vote in a very solid way. I mean, that was the first thing that my parents, or you know, my grandparents were not from this country, but when they became citizens, that was the first thing that they did was vote. That they couldn't wait to vote. And it was taught to us that this is an obligation. They would even take us as children to the polls to show us what the voting and what it was about and what it looked like. And it was why would politicians be so concerned with courting the Jewish vote? And it's been traditional in New York, at least, to do that, because Jews vote traditionally as a group, and they vote very, you know, consistently, not necessarily one way or the other, but they're voters. They are voters.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. But did they vote because of his letter?
No,
No.
I think that the concept of the letter was a reflection of why people wanted to vote, but I don't think that they voted because of the letter.
Then I got to go ahead, Ruth.
I think we talk about gaining citizenship. I remember the same thing with my grandparents. They didn't go to vote out of a sense of obligation, but it was like a sense of appreciation that now they're here in a free country and they're permitted to do so. And they felt they really wanted to go out and participate. I don't think it was a feeling of obligation so much as appreciation for what they were given here.
Marty, did you have your hand up or you were just scratching?
Me?
No, Marty Cohn, sorry,
Yeah,
Marty
Marty.
Cohn.
Scratching.
Okay,
A little scratch from Marty.
go ahead, Cantor, go ahead.
Well, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was a very, very respected rabbi. And I think anybody that's respected and gives an opinion about something, a lot of people do follow that because of how they think about that person.
Yep.
So I think a lot of Jews, especially probably practicing Jews, Orthodox, or conservative, whatever, gave that a lot of thought when he wrote a letter like that.
So here's my problem. Go ahead, Arthur, go ahead.
I just make a comment that I think part of what he was trying to demand or command, or at least suggest, is as the Jewish community should not get lazy, should not walk away from this right to vote, that it's an important right to support your community and your views.
So here's my problem. All right, go ahead, Ms. Brody, go ahead.
Just very quickly, I mean, women and Blacks and so many people who are suppressed consider it a gigantic privilege to vote. They fought,
Right.
They died just for the honor to be able to vote. So I think it's a reflection of what his letter was trying to say.
Yeah, so my problem is, why write a letter if there's no need to? That's a pretty harsh letter. I mean, why sit back and say, you know what, I got nothing else to do. I finished studying my Torah. I wrote my sermon. Everything's good. I did my weddings. I did my conversions. So now all I'm going to do is write a letter that I really don't need to, because everybody, all the Jews are voting anyway. So my problem is, what was his motivation behind writing that letter? Obviously, I'm guessing here because I don't know. Obviously, he felt that we weren't doing what we should be doing. Erwin, you're nodding your head.
Yes, I agree. That's why he wrote this letter, for his following at least to vote.
Yeah. That's what I would think.
He was an Orthodox sage. He was called the Rav. And he was actually, I think, involved with the Yeshiva University. And I guess many of the Orthodox wanting to stand back from participation in the government, maybe they weren't exercising their franchise. And I think that hearing from a man of this caliber of knowledge would follow what he said. And that's the reason he wrote the letter, to get his people, as Erwin said, to step up to the plate and do their civic duty.
All right. Any other comments on this one before I move on to something even more controversial? Gene?
Yes, I would like to point out to everybody that the early people who came over from Europe, the early Jews that came over here from Europe, very socialistic in outlook. This was something that was in tune to their way of living and thinking about. And I think the Rev was just reflecting some of that thought.
I'd like
Thank
to
you.
add. I'd like to
Jan?
add something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go.
So that just historical, for historical perspective, in 1984, it was Ronald Reagan running with his running mate George Bush against Walter Mondale and Geraldine Ferraro. Just for a sense of historical perspective.
Mhm.
And, Reagan's won very, very strongly there, but
Right.
I don't know what was going on politically in the Jewish world then, but he must have had a reason to do that.
All right, let's go on to another interesting topic, all related though. Let's assume for a moment we live in a country where where it's a dictatorship. The leader does not like the Jews. There are pogroms. The citizens of the country are treated awfully and terribly. And we go to shul on Shabbos morning, and the chazan and the rabbi announce we are about to do a prayer for the government. Should we pray for the success of the government that is a despot, a dictator, a Jew hater, and a general schmuck?
We should pray for a change.
Yeah, that's right. Marty said.
All right, pray for a change. Go ahead,
It
Ruth.
reminds me of Fiddler on the Roof when it says, "May God present the czar very far away."
Aha.
How we
Okay.
protect
Any
him
other
very far away.
Any other opinions on this question? Well, let's see what really happened, okay? And then this will, in fact, surprise you. Let's see what really happened. There was a prayer book in Vilna in 1914, and here is the English translation. It's rather long, so bear with me. May he, meaning Hashem, grant salvations to king and dominions to rulers, whose kingdom is a kingdom spanning all eternity, who releases David his servant from the evil sword, who places a road in the sea and a path in the mighty waters. In other words, God, Hashem, is great. May he bless, protect, guard, assist, elevate, exalt, and lift upwards our master, Tsar Nikolai Alexandrovich, I'm not going to pronounce that again, with his wife, their son, the crown prince, and his mother, the honorable whatever. May the entire house of our king may their glory be exalted. May the King of Kings in his mercy give him life and protect him and save him from every trouble, woe, and injury. May nations submit under his feet, and may his enemies fall before him, and may he succeed in whatever he endeavors. Gosh, I wish people would pray about the rest of us this way. May the King of Kings in his mercy grant compassion in his heart, in the heart of all his advisors, to do us favors, to do favors for us and for all Israel, our brethren. In his days and in our days, may Judah be saved, and may Israel dwell securely, and may the Redeemer come to Zion. So be it will. And we all say, Amen. Reactions.
That was propaganda so that the Jews could show the non-Jews that they were loyal to the Tsar and that they should be looked upon as being loyal subjects and not create extra wrath for persecution, because God forbid either they didn't have such a prayer or they had a prayer that said the opposite. So it was a very, very expedient political move to incorporate that into the liturgy.
So are you suggesting, Stephen, that when people were davening, they looked at the words and they said, down with the Tsar, or what do you think?
Down with the Tsar, stay away from us. I mean, I think it was done more than just for people to come in and watch them pray, but if they got a copy of the prayer book, they would say, boy, these Jews are very loyal subjects. We shouldn't be so difficult on them. It was a propaganda move, 100%.
Other inputs. Jan, did you have your hand up?
Oh, no, but I agree with Stephen. I think that we want to, I understand praying for the success of the Tsar so that he is well, because sometimes when the people on the top, things start to go bad for them, their first people to blame are the Jews.
Right.
So may it be okay for them. Leave us alone.
All right. So somebody else, anybody else?
One
Go ahead,
of the
Arthur.
lines I saw in the prayer is basically said, teach him compassion, the czar.
Yeah.
So it's basically let him be okay so he might change and become a better ruler, a more just ruler.
Got it. So let me ask you this question. If tonight your candidate loses, I'm not asking who your candidate is, none of my business. If tonight your candidate loses, if we happen to know, so just work with me, okay? And we're in Shul on Shabbat, and there's a prayer for the country as leaders and advisors, and you know they're talking about the candidate that you wanted to have win but lost, will you say, if you like the candidate who won, will you do the prayer honestly? And if you don't like the guy who won, would you say, the heck with this new guy, these people who voted for him are nuts? What would you do?
You gotta.
Don't forget, Anthony, that you have a Siddur that also comes to us from Great Britain, which has a tremendous prayer for the king or the queen, and is very supportive of the king or queen. Not the way this one is written at all, but entirely different. I think Jonathan Sachs has a Siddur that talks about that exactly. And I think we should mention it while we're along these topics here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you for mentioning it, Gene. I appreciate it. We all appreciate that. So what are you going to do if your candidate does not win? Will you say the prayer honestly or curse under your teeth? Ruth?
I think what you have to do is to say the prayer and just hope he'll change, or hope he'll be different, or hope he'll see the light. I don't know how else to say it. Like, it just in reading it all these last weeks and these months, that's always my feeling. When I say help our leaders and advisors, my feeling always has been they really need our help. And I'm just not being party specific. They really need our prayers because they're doing a lousy job, all of them. And maybe something I could say to Hashem will make them see it differently. So
interesting. Go ahead, Marty Cohn. Marty Cohn, and then Marty iPad. Marty Cohn.
Hi. So I'm going back to Exodus, and Moses went to the Pharaoh, and he gave him 10 chances to be a mensch. So I'm thinking that we should, by the numbers, give whatever government we're having problems with 10 chances to be a mensch.
And what happens on the 11th?
No, I meant 9 chances, and at the 10th, we take his son away.
Oh. Okay, I don't know if I'll keep that in the recording, but I got it. All right, someone else, Marty iPad, go ahead.
We should pray for our leaders, whether we voted for them or not, because we're praying for the success of our country. And that is most important.
There you go. So keep this in mind. Many of us might be familiar. Years back, there was a school of Hillel and the school of Shammai. And they basically disagreed on everything. One particular, Hillel was a traditionalist and a literalist. So whatever was written in the laws, he said, this is the way you must do it. There is no room. Yeah. Shammai was a liberal guy. Did I have it twisted? Yeah. Shammai was a liberal guy. Okay? And they fought, no, I take that back. Shammai was the strict guy. Hillel was a liberal guy. Yeah, I twisted it. Thank you. I knew I did it wrong. So anyway, they argued. And of course, the liberal won out more arguments than anyone else. I think he only lost 2, if I remember correctly. But here's my point.
I don't know who Marty and Nancy Cohn are.
So here's my point. My point is as follows. Right after all the arguing, they all got along. And even though their students argued like heck, they married each other. So students of Hillel and students of Shammai, in spite of all the philosophical, political differences on how to interpret the Torah and all the rules that surrounded it, they all loved each other. Kids married kids, granddaughters married granddaughters. So is there a lesson in there for us today
you can be competitors, but you don't have to be enemies. You don't have to be an enemy of your competition. You can be opponent. You can be an opponent, but you don't have to be an enemy. Unfortunately, in this country, what's devolved is that opposition has become enmity and hatred, and that's not good. Hillel and Shammai had basic philosophical disagreements, but at the end of the day, they understood that they were both Torah scholars and they had different viewpoints, but they did not hate each other. In this country, political opponents have become political enemies, and the people who support the different groups also have exhibited hatred and violence toward other groups or back and forth, and that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Ruth, go for it.
Unfortunately, that has even affected families.
Yeah.
Family members are so violently opposed and so set in their ways of these political opinions that family members
Gene, there's noise in the background. I can't hear Ruth.
family
She's
members have
very
split
nice.
apart over
She's a
political
sweet
differences.
lady.
It's become so polarized.
Right. And that's where we should take a lesson from Hillel and Shammai. Jan?
I was going to mention that the Jewish way of vikuach, of Torah study, of chavruta, is actually to be in conflict so we can learn and we teach each other in the process. Now, does it translate into our world today? In places it does, but in other places it definitely doesn't. So there's where we are.
Carol, did I miss your hand? Did you want to say something? I thought I missed your hand. Okay. Anybody else want to add something to this part? So go ahead, Paul.
The days of McCain and Biden are gone.
McCain and Biden.
Expand on that. Expand on that, please.
No, about getting along. Opposed the two oppositions, they always figured out how to get along.
Okay, I got you.
They were not vile.
I got you now. Okay, thank you. I didn't understand what you were trying to go for. All right, so what we covered today was the background of the United States government coming from Judaism, the fact that according to the Jewish thought, we are guests in this country. We have an obligation to support the government of this country. We have an obligation that once all the elections are over, as Jan said so eloquently using the Hebrew, everybody gets together and in a common bond. My point there being is that even in Judaism, we should do that, because in Judaism, we're all polarized right now anyway. And we're even worse than Hillel and Shammai between the various different approaches to the spiritual practice of Judaism. So not only does it relate to the political events, the government, and the whole situation. So I want to do a recap before we conclude, because everybody wants to see what the returns are. So Paul, I'm going to start with you.
Because they keep saying it's too early to call. It's too early.
Paul, Mo, I'm going to start with you.
Go on later.
Did you know any of this stuff that we covered this evening?
That I know, no.
No. Are you happy you now know it?
Yeah, very enlightening, really.
Mo, your thoughts?
I'm glad I attended the class, and I did learn quite a bit, and I had some, there's a lot to think about in what you presented. Appreciate
Carolyn?
it.
Some of it we have covered in the past. But
You've been around for all these years, but not all, I try to throw some new stuff in, yeah.
But you did give us information that we did not know before. So,
Arthur?
Yashikawa.
Brooke, thank you. Brooke, yeah.
I found it interesting, the very beginning of the class, whether we're guests or permanent residents. I enjoyed that challenge and the two sides of the opinion. I otherwise thought that, yes, where we did come out, that is, we should be active and supportive of our local governments.
The courts, what sayeth you?
Nice job, Andy. Great texts. I did know a bunch of this stuff, but it certainly reminded me at the very end about this importance of of the Hillel Shammai story, that we grow deeper with those things. If we just have one opinion, we don't grow. And it's a really hard thing when we don't agree with that opinion, but we have to live with it and we have to learn. So I hope that, I hope we can all learn. I hope we can all get better.
You bet. Ruth?
Oh, no, as I said, I was not aware of specific texts, but I was aware of the biblical context of founding fathers, and that a lot of our democracy was based on Old Testament just feelings and discussions. So, but I was not aware of specific texts that you introduced us to.
Reference. Yep. Collins, what do you think?
Same thing. I knew a lot of this stuff. I don't know what I'm doing with it, but I knew it.
Gene, what do you think? Did you know a lot of this stuff? And now, if you didn't, are you happy
Well,
that you do?
I didn't know where they would come. I've heard many of these things before, Andy. I just didn't know where they were coming from, and you helped me an awful lot with that.
You betcha. All right. Brody's, what sayeth you?
I think it was very enlightening, and I think that it's a gigantic challenge now compared to any historical time because of media, because of so much exposure to so many different factions. But I thought of one thing that I just read, that after this election is over, and this is going back to what you're saying, is you're still going to get up every morning, you're still going to eat your breakfast, you're still going to go to work, and then you're going to support your country. And so I guess that ties in with what you're saying. You have to, support the place that you live in. And Judaism is very, very important.
Right. Mark, I don't know how much of the session you were involved in. I don't know if you have any closing comments.
No, it was interesting to learn a lot of this stuff.
Erwin, what do you think?
Was aware of the Hebrew basic for the Constitution and the judicial, but many other things I wasn't aware of.
And are you happy you now know them?
Yes, I don't know if I put it to use, but I know of it.
No, yeah, you got that. Steve, what do you think?
You can always learn something new, Andy, and it's always good to learn from each other, and of course from you. And I think the opinions of the Chavruta are always exceptionally pointed, and everybody pays attention to everyone else's point of view, and that's what learning is all about.
You betcha. Marty iPad, what sayeth you?
Interesting and enlightening. It's nice the way you tie it all in. It was very good. I learned a lot.
Good. See, the main theme, like we talked about when we first started the class, is to bring Jewish education to life. So what do I mean by that? We have all the texts, we've got all the backgrounds, we've got all the ideas, and how do we bring that to modern day life? Because Jewish education for just education, that's a nice to know. But once we all collectively can translate that into how we live today, that's the goal. That, in my viewpoint, that's the goal of getting a Jewish education. What does it say, and how do we use it? How do we take our knowledge and turn it into wisdom? With that, I bid you shalom, adios. May the candidate of your choice win, and may we support whatever candidate wins, and come together as a nation, as Jews, for the benefit of the country and for the benefit of Judaism.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.